Welcome to episode 98 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy features conversations with Canadian theatre makers of all stripes, from actor to director to playwright and more. If you want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at StageworthyPodcast.com. My guest this week is Will King. Will is an actor, teacher, and the artistic director of Seven Siblings Theatre. Seven Siblings is presenting their Future Theatre Festival starting October 19th at the Attic Arts Hub in Toronto. Our conversation started just before the record key was hit with the question from Will, are you looking forward to the new Blade Runner movie?
When I first heard that they were doing a sequel, I basically thought that it didn't need to happen.
It
didn't, and then once I saw that Denis Villeneuve was doing it, I was like, maybe okay.
I'm still of the opinion that it doesn't need a sequel.
Yeah,
but then apparently it's all really more about like what franchise can we reboot to make some money. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. The one. So, this could also act as a reboot, right? I imagine, I don't know if this one ends as bleakly as the original, but because the original didn't really give you the opportunity for a sequel.
No.
And this one, I wonder, if they do that, are they like franchising? Are they like...
I kind of hope they're not.
Yeah, I would hope they're not too, but you never know.
I guess that's basically what happened with it, is they kind of revamped it into...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess they tried that again with the Dark Tower 2, but that fell pretty flat on its face.
But they tried that with the last Nightmare on Elm Street movie. They sort of did the same thing.
Yeah.
As long as... Because for a while there was a rumor that The Rock was going to remake A Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay.
And I'm like, do not touch my movie.
No, I think people get to the place, too, that... certain things don't need to be worked. But that's kind of the difference between, I think, film and theaters.
Yeah.
Theater... And that's kind of like, I don't know, I think the reboot is kind of the dark horse in that, though, too. Because it's kind of like, it's nice to see another actor take up the mantle of that character from that perspective.
It's true.
But it's dangerous, right? Because it's like rewriting literature.
Well, because the difference that we have... I'm going to leave this in, by the way, since we're like dovetailing like
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean
No. We're going straight into theater talk, but I mean, that's kind of the thing that sets theater apart from film, and why, nobody gets pissed off if you do another version of Romeo and Juliet, for example, because maybe they never saw the last one that they could have seen, right? But, when something goes on film, there's a permanence to it.
Of course, yeah.
And, you can always see it. Mm-hmm. Unless it's like one of those really lost films from before we were treating film like anything, like, when there's all these lost silent films, but like the film is permanent in a way that theater is not.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that's part of the vitality of the art form too, is the way in which it's framed can only be done ideally in that way once. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's written that way as well. They want the permanence. I think directors are cautious.
Oh,
whereas,
absolutely,
if you go up to a playwright and say your play is going to be done 3 times this year, they go, awesome.
Well, that's sort of the difference in that when a playwright writes a play, they're writing in terms of, when I write, I leave so many holes open for people to interpret. I mean, Tennessee Williams, he wrote a whole lot of stuff, but, I don't describe a set. I don't.
Right.
I tell you what you need, and then a director and a group of actors are going to make the final decision later on.
Right.
So, whereas film is like, you describe it because there's people building it. Like, it's
right,
like,
of course. Yeah, I mean, the Macron it's
it.
so funny because I think they're both collaborative, but in such different ways. I think the collaboration trickles down to the actors eventually, I think, within the theater, just in the way that it's portrayed,
Yep.
in the way that the information is consumed, and you want to make sure that everything's involved and that operates through them. Whereas film, the collaboration all moves through the director, right? So the director's in charge of keeping tabs on sometimes tens or hundreds or thousands or, an extreme amount of people.
Yeah.
And they're kind of that filter.
Yeah. The other thing that's really different about theater is that eventually the director takes his hands off the wheel.
Yes.
And in film, the director never really takes her hands off the wheel, whereas like in theater, you just sort of like walk away at a certain point and you hand it over to the stage manager.
Yeah, unless you produce.
Well, even when you produce,
of course,
technically you are, you're hands off stage manager show now, Although, I've worked with a few directors who...
I think I always leave it up to the actors. After opening night, if I'm sticking around, I say... You can always come ask me. I'll always tell you. And otherwise, just keep going. I won't, I'll respect your need to grow.
Right.
And I think that's important. I think sometimes people need the room to take those risks and feel that they're supported in doing so.
Well, people
and then sometimes people want that support. They want to be held accountable in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's only through the running of a show that you really know it. Like 2 weeks of rehearsal, like almost is not enough. And you don't really know a show until you've like run it a whole lot in front of an audience. Because if it's new, you don't even know how the audience is going to react to it yet.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun. I think sometimes when you're working with different types of materials, you have no idea how people are going to consume that material, right? Or how they're going to take it. I always think that's a lot of fun. It can be really stressful, but mostly I think it's fun.
Yeah. Well, I've produced some things, and I remember being in some new comedies, but not really knowing. Like you're like, we think this is funny.
Oh yeah, comedy is one of those things. I feel like you have to just bring people into the room at a certain point before you're opening. I feel like you need a preview for a comedy, and I think previews are valuable, but I think it's necessary for a comedy because it changes your pacing. It can change the meaning of so much of the material.
Yeah, some of the things that I've premiered, it was like fringy and stuff like that, so you didn't really have like a preview.
Yeah,
you could bring some people in, but often it's like people and who you trust, and then you're like, oh, but they know our sense of humor. Are they? Is this actually funny? So you have this like moment of like right before that first laugh in a show, and you're like, I am not going to be able to relax until this moment.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Oh, there it is, and now it's good. How long have you been? So Seven Siblings Theater. That's your company.
We should talk about that for sure.
And how long has Seven Siblings been around?
So we've been around since 2014. We've done 7 or 8 shows. We did one show. Erica directed a version of Romeo and Juliet in Windsor, which is actually where the first show existed under like the Seven Siblings mantle. And she really did that kind of out of school. So she had that in the studio, and they kind of gave her that space to do the show, and it was nice. And I think in a great number of ways, the producing was fairly risk-free, which was a great way to get started.
Yeah.
And for us to feel like we had that kind of security. The first show that I directed is called Mercury Fur by Philip Ridley. Okay. We did that at the old Unit 102 space.
Okay.
And that was our first kind of experience, renting a venue, dealing with rehearsal space. We had the great fortune, actually, in that circumstance of one of the actresses was Annemieke Wade, who used to be company manager at the Tarragon. Yeah. And she was, in fact, at the time that we were rehearsing this. So we actually ended up rehearsing in that space. And we've rehearsed in that space since then.
Yeah.
And so they've been very, very good to us. And letting us in there when they're not, they have shows, but when they have space available in the studio. And so we've done a range of material. I'm trying to think of, it's specifically, the work that we do is fantastic realism. So that's our wheelhouse. Everything that we've done exists within that direction. So, for simplicity's sake, it's often seen as something that is heightened or supernatural or absurd, or just kind of anti-naturalist theater, I guess, in a sense, is maybe the easiest way to sum that up. So we've done, absurdist plays. We did Rhinoceros. We did Picasso with the Lapinagile, which is the Steve Martin play. I think it's just one of those things that allows a greater freedom for the actors. And I just find the world's really rich when you start moving into that realm of fantasy. You start taking advantage of the medium of theater, you know? And I think that's not to say I don't like going to see National Theater as well or acting in it, but as a producer, as a director, I think I enjoy this realm the most.
Do you find this sort of style of theater a challenge in the indie theater realm?
I think so. Yeah. I think in a way. I've been joking the past kind of year or so. I don't know if this is like really a fair statement, but I think it's kind of true. I think sometimes we end up producing kind of counterculture theater. Mm-hmm. And I think the hardest thing about counterculture theater, as much as I love it, is that it's counterculture theater. And so that people don't necessarily think that they know that they need it. But I think it's extremely revitalizing to see things within this world. And it's so funny too, because I think, you know, we start gravitating towards a filmic style of storytelling, but there is fantasy in film. I think so often we're trying to look for the most realistic way of showing something when I'd like to see the most truthful way of showing something, the most honest way. And I think there's realism in that. Like, I don't want to see something that's just off the wall and like crazy for its own sake. Like, I have no interest in doing that. But at the same time, I think there's something nice about going a bit beyond the everyday.
Yeah. Once you start adding fantasy into the mix, I think and possibly one of the reasons why indie theater often maybe might shy away from a fantasy realm is you start thinking about, like, how much is this going to cost? Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I mean, we've learned to, with shows, and I think we get better and better at the expectations of how to do that. We did a show in 2015 called Fever Dream, which was, maybe a bit more expensive than it should have been, but it was the first time that I kind of worked with projections and did projection design and kind of immersed myself in it for about 6 months, and we built a world that was as malleable as the script was, which was in and of itself a kind of a challenge. It's an adaptation of Life is a Dream, but it takes place in a corporate office setting, and so each of the 4 quarters kind of sees the rise of this character who's been locked in the basement for 21 years. Then he becomes the head of the company. Then he gets thrown back down in the basement, and then he leads this kind of like corporate revolution through this space. But there's things in the play that say, you know, oh, he's kissed and the room turns to water. Or all of the accountants are suddenly now account ants, and they're ants, and they march around the room and they're following him. And we didn't want to take away from the fact that was the world. I mean, sometimes there's definitely value in saying, you know, we can't do this. There's no, it's not necessary for us to do this. But in this one particular play, it felt necessary to do it. Otherwise, we were kind of cheapening the story in the state, because the play, just the dream state of the play was so important to the story that it felt like it had to be seen. But for the most part, I don't think that's usually necessary. I think sometimes seeing the people and seeing the domestic relationships is more interesting than seeing the world. We don't need color or visuals to understand atmosphere. You know, we don't, it's nice when we have it. And, you know, when we have those resources, they're certainly useful for getting people to understand what's being done. But one of my favorite things to do with actors is understand how to play with atmosphere and how to explore atmosphere and how to define what's going on within the space without seeing it. We don't need a sound designer or lighting designer to do that. It's just that it's wonderful when they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you were doing your projection stuff for that show, were you just like, was it straight up projection, or were you looking at the live projection mapping that some people are doing?
So it was a bit of both. I mean, I ran it through Isadora. I don't know if you've ever built anything in Isadora, but it's specifically kind of like a live performance projection software. And so we, a very good friend of mine, Parker Nolan, who's like a godsend of lighting capability, got these basically 8 LEDs that we kind of rigged up in the space we were down at Jumblee's Theatre. They've got a studio down by Fort York. And we had built kind of these white walls And so we had the 8 lights kind of set up on one side, and then the other side I had a projector running into a kind of a scrim. And so we would match all of the projections that were done on the back that was eventually built to the show with the lighting. And so we had matched the kind of the two, so that when the room went to water, the projections and, you know, most of the image would go to water, and then you'd see it, just the whole room would go blue because it was a white space too. So we kind of built this kind of backstage world, and we basically built it into a theater, but we liked it because it felt a little bit corporate in that space, just because it was part of a new condo. It had that kind of industrial feeling, and then it was also white, so we just bathed it in color.
Nice. Yeah. When did you start being interested in doing theater?
Well, I've always kind of done theater, as far as I know. My parents signed me up for a theater camp that I still teach at when I was about 5 or 6, called Theatrics, which is over in the East End. If there's ever kids who want to do theater, you should check it out. They're really lovely. And so I did that throughout all of my childhood. Essentially, the way that the format of the group works is that they devise a play over 2 weeks, usually sketch comedy with kids, and they work with your ideas and your characters. Then we structure them and we write a series of scenes. We don't give them actual lines, but we kind of build the plot treatment.
Right.
And we workshop it, and then they show it to the parents at the end of 2 weeks. So I had been doing that for most of my life. And it was interesting that I just kind of got used to it through that world. When I was in high school, I started working there, and I was working on the weekends, devising a show once a season, I guess. We'd meet once a week with the kids for 3 or 4 hours. And now, I mean, I went to university. I'd be working there throughout the summer, and now I teach a class on Mondays for teenagers that we break down work, like scripted work. So it's a bit different than actually what they offer usually. But we pick a playwright or a style of theater or a particular tone. Sometimes we made our own work. Sometimes we worked with existing writers, and we just kind of dive into that for 9 weeks and then show the parents at the end what we've kind of worked with. And I think that's a nice way to kind of offer a balance between the two, because I think it's important to learn how to create work. Yeah. And it's also important to learn how to dissect work. And if you can have a good balance between the two, then you're pretty well set. So I don't even know if it was only at the end of high school that I really realized you could do this as a career.
It's funny how many people put air quotes around that when I talk to them. When did you realize you could do this for a career? But you don't remember, was there a particular reason why your parents first put you in the theatrics, or? Yeah.
Well, my brother was signed up the year before I was, but, I mean, really the in for me as an actor more from theater, I guess, because they just had them around us, was film. When I was like, I don't know, 1, my dad would put a movie on and I'd watch the whole thing. And my brother would be running around in circles, and he's lovely. He's very intelligent. But we had different, brains or different focuses. So I'd love features. Like I'd sit and I'd watch movies over and over. I've seen the first Star Wars like a million times. Many people have, but it was kind of like one of the first films that I saw, and so I watched it front to back forever. And I think it was pretty prevalent. I'd be making board games. I read a lot as a kid. I was always kind of interested in character and stories, and it just kind of fell into place, I guess. Because to me, it felt like the best way to understand people, I think. It was a good way to understand different types of people, understand the world and philosophy, and it was just kind of an in towards my understanding of lots of things, I guess.
When you were in high school, did you do shows in high school aside from your work in theatrics, or did theatrics become more of the world?
So we did some stuff there. We did a couple shows within that world, and then I did. I went to Rosedale, which is the regional art school in Toronto, and they have a really fantastic theater department. We'd be devising work throughout my time there. I wrote a couple of plays. They do a Fringe Fest once a year for like new plays, about 20 new plays by people in grade 11 and 12. Right. We did Marat Saad's in grade 11. It was actually fantastic. The head of the drama department now is Tamsin Kelsey, who's a actor, and she's actually married to a playwright as well. But I think it was it was just a reminder that you can do this. I think she's one of the people who kind of helped me understand, like, this is where you go to theater school. This is how this is set up. And this is how much work it is, you know? And I think that was great. But I think maybe I've been very fortunate in the sense that it was instilled upon me. And both my parents, I should also mention, are artists. They're not in theater and they're not in literature, but my mom is a musician. She's a piano teacher, and my dad's an architect and a guitar and bass player. Yeah. And so I kind of understood that you could be an independent artist without, dying. Yeah.
And when you were saying that when you finished high school, that's when you realized that you could, do this for a living. What was it that made you realize that? And then what was your next step?
I don't know. I think I just kind of thought that there must be people who are doing it, and there's people who are doing it well. And I had seen people, I think a couple, you'd see people in your neighborhood, whatever, kind of achieved like workability, been able to tour and that type of thing. Yeah. And I kind of figured I just wanted to do it and find out if I could figure it out. And really, I don't know what else I would do. Like and there's nothing, I make the joke that I wish I woke up one day and just wanted to go work at a bank. But I don't, I never will have that experience. So I applied to a lot of theater schools. I applied to a couple schools for writing as well, but ultimately I was more interested in performing. And I went to Windsor.
Okay. Yeah. And at what point did you and the people in Seven Siblings realize that forming a company was something you were going to do?
Yeah, so that's kind of two-tiered. We are graduates of the University of Windsor, but from different times. So the link between us is the former head of dramatic art there, and he's still he's got a position in the university. I can't remember the exact title. I should, but I don't. His name is Lionel Walsh, and he's a certified master teacher of the Michael Chekhov Acting Technique. And there's an association in the United States called the Great Lakes Michael Chekhov Consortium, which is essentially because the middle of these four master teachers is in the Great Lakes, and so that's where they have hundreds of people come every year for a few weeks and study to become teachers of this technique. And we had studied with Lionel at the University of Windsor because it's part of the core of our work, and really it had been the thing that made me feel most confident with my work. I mean, there's a lot of tools that I learned in school, but I think the Chekhov technique always made me feel comfortable and not secure in I felt pleased with myself, but being able to go out and take risks on a nightly basis and feeling secure in your choices. I felt like it was really unifying, and it brought me a lot of ease as a performer. And so I wanted to learn how to do it consistently and be able to share that with other people so that I could kind of build that theater. And ultimately, Erica and Madra and I all went in the same year. And so we would drive up into the States every year. We'd train there for 2 years, and we'd come back. And it's kind of expected. Many of the people who are doing this are university professors at different places in the States. There's a couple of people who are private teachers at institutions, but the majority aren't actually actors. They're acting teachers. Okay. And so we wanted to make sure that we were continuing to develop our eye as teachers of the work when we were not there. And so the company was kind of formed so that we would have projects to work on. We would have a way to kind of explain the vocabulary to people and get up and do the exercises. And it brought us, an opportunity to kind of fine tune that craft for ourselves as well. It brought the conversation into the room so that it wasn't just me going into a show and being like, hey, here's the thing I do. And they're like, great, that's awesome. Good for you. I'm glad that you do that. I don't mean to say that people are cynical, but it was, it's nice being in a room where you have a shared vocabulary. And we certainly don't stop other people from bringing their other work in. But part of the way that we work is we always use that as our base. It's just, it's a very unifying technique. And I think most people who kind of come into it realize that quite quickly, that it will be quite unifying.
Do you ever find people coming in who are reluctant to do it?
Yeah, I think
because I mean, there's a certain point at which one like not the process won't work for everybody, and I've been in rehearsal processes where people are like, "Well, this is how we work," and it just feels so. Instead of being the liberating thing they think it is, it ends up being very constricting to be told that this is how you work when you don't necessarily.
Yeah. The work itself is very physical. So I think sometimes the only time that I actually experience it in the room where people are distancing themselves is because they won't give into the physical nature of the work.
Okay.
You know, because we do exercises like quality of movement or psychological gesture, or there's one called the Three Sisters of the Sensations, where you're rising, falling, and balancing. And you have to be able to, it's physically kind of exhausting, and so you have to match it. You have to kind of give it 110, you get 110 back.
Right.
But on the whole, I think the philosophy is actually quite unifying. Like the Michael Chekhov work really pulled from a lot of things. One of the core principles is the Four Brothers, which is the feeling of ease, form, beauty, and the whole. And that can be applied to so many art forms that it doesn't feel restrictive to me.
Right.
And so many of the exercises, I don't think, I mean, maybe this... I am a certified teacher of the technique, and I believe it as a technique, but I think sometimes the word technique can be really burdensome on people. Like it has this like reverence attached to it. I like to think of it like they're games, you know, they're physical exercises. They're ways of just getting us out of our head and into our bodies and just streamlining the way that we have our intentions. And I think sometimes in the room, I'll emphasize that. Like we're not doing this because a dead person has continued to have this command on our capacity. It's because it's useful, right? And if it's not useful, then we won't use it. And I should also say, I mean, we go through a select number of the exercises through every rehearsal process. We don't do, there's too many. There's a lot of capacity. There's, 18, 20 exercises more. I mean, if you wanted to keep making them up, but I'd say core exercises that you can use, and we use about 3 to 5 because you don't want to waste time teaching something that you won't actually use. And we tell people, when we get to the end of our rehearsal process, just use whatever worked for you. I'm not going to come over and be like, are you using the exercise? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if they got something out of it, great. If they didn't get something out of it, that's fine. Because we do the exercise and we apply them to the scene work right away. I don't want it to be separate. I want it to keep helping people evolve through the work and just become increasingly specific. And I mean, to some degree, I think just impassioned in their work. That they want to feel that they have a personal connection to what they're doing. I think it can be really valuable for that as well.
So the Future Theatre Festival, is this the first year?
This is the first year that we've done the festival. And really, this is one of the first times that we've done new work within our company. And I think it was something that felt a bit overdue. Not that I, don't like any of the other things that we've done. I love the work that we've done, but it was something that I realized that I really love working on new work, and I had been working on new work a long time, and we hadn't done it as a company. And I think it's because we were really trying to be clear about the type of work that we produce. So we were seeking plays that help people understand who we are, so that when the new playwrights came in and the new work comes in, it's very, in tune with what our mandate is. And we just wanted to make sure that we were working within something that we could succeed in. You kind of don't want to go from 0 to 100 in no time flat. But in this case, I think it's a great opportunity for us to support 3 playwrights through a process. It was important to me that if we were doing this, although I'm not essentially... I do some dramaturgy, but I'm not dramaturging. We do some rehearsal within our development sessions, but I'm not rehearsing all the shows. Like we're here to support whatever they need. And it's interesting that with all 3 of the shows, they have a completely different take on a rehearsal process. They have a completely different team and size and scope. like Naui is directing his own work, and Genevieve is bringing in a separate director, and Becky is working the piece with Scott, just the two of them, and they go back and forth. And so we bring all of these people together once a month, and we've been working on development sessions. And each month we've had a different focus. The first was on playwriting, and then we went into dramaturgy and character, atmosphere. This week we're looking at staging, and we just want to make sure that it's focused. And we bring in some of the tools that we know within the work to kind of help people see the work from a new lens or embody the work in a new way. And then we say, okay, go back and write some more.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because I see a lot of times, people get produced, but I don't think they get the resources to succeed. Mm-hmm. And so I thought if we were going to do this, I wanted to make sure that people felt like they were being supported in what their development was. And I also don't want to feel like they're being restricted by what my tastes are. So it is kind of a delicate balance. Again, it's something that I'm learning is I think successfully. But it's just, it's how to make sure that they are supported and that you do give them the help they need without, changing the scope and style of their writing.
Mm-hmm. So when these three playwrights came in, how much did they have and how much did they know about what the process was going to be like?
Well, they all knew the type of work that we were going to do. And then the scripts themselves ranged. So usually we had a sample of writing or we had a large sample of their previous writing. Some of the plays were partially done. None of the plays were fully finished. Mm-hmm. Which I think is important because we actually wanted to be a part of building it. I think, structurally. We try to be as clear as possible, I think, with people what our process is so that no one is surprised. But also I think a lot of the people who end up working with us work with us because they want to learn. You don't have to know the Michael Chekhov work to work on a show where it's used. I think that's one of the great values of it, is it's quite inclusive. And so I think a lot of the fun for me has actually been tailoring it towards a writer's perspective. So much of it is actor-centric, but we'd be doing actor exercises so that the playwrights could observe. For example, in the first, I can't remember if it was the first or second session, we did an exercise called the Palace exercise. And essentially the way the Palace exercise works is you get the playwright to bring in about 10 themes, and they submit the list, and I look at the list and figure out which has the best kind of suitability for the exercise. And the actors put themselves through just like a kind of psychophysical palace, like a location, a false location, where each one of the different rooms is a theme in the play. And you just explore within that theme for 3 to 5 minutes. You generally do it in character, although you don't have to. And it kind of helped me see, using the team that the playwright was going to use, what themes they were circling around and what ideas they were circling around. It helped them see how it was going to be manifested before they actually wrote it down. So you'd see, the escapism, or you would see plague, or you would see ghosts, you'd see loss. Like they can be both literal and kind of emotional places, but just have to keep people playing. Like you don't want them stuck and watching. It's like kind of a different thing. But I just thought it was so fascinating to see the raw material of somebody's writing, and try to put that in the space and give them, just give them something to walk out with. So that they didn't feel like they had to write in circles. Like they always had something fresh to apply to their work.
Were the playwrights watching or participating?
Watching.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So essentially they would be the person sitting with me, and then we'd be coaching through the exercise, and each one would take about 20 minutes. Yeah.
Did any of the playwrights want to get up and play? Or?
No, not usually.
No?
They wanted to take notes. Everyone, each of our sessions begins with like about a half hour of ensemble work, in which I think it's important that everyone who's in the room participates, so that I think that's kind of the exciting thing that I think is really valuable, is that we've created an ensemble amongst the shows, which you almost never see. Not to just value other things, but that was also one of the things that we thought was really exciting, is making everyone involved in the festival included in what that ensemble was, and then seeing the value of the differences, because the shows are very different, and the styles are very different.
No, that is sort of a rare thing, because usually at a festival you're just concentrating on your cast and your world, and you don't often get to interact with, especially not really early on, you don't end up interacting with a show that's still in its infancy. You end up it's only during performance that you might interact with them at all.
Yeah, so we would do things like swap scenes. You know, just take a scene from somebody's play and drop it off on someone else and see what they do with it. You know, and the writer would go, "Oh, that's not what I wanted at all," or "Oh, I'm gonna have to change that line because otherwise it's gonna be interpreted as this." Or but I just thought it's been nice. I think it engineers a nice sense of play within the process, so that it isn't cold.
How much do you know about the plays as they are right now? Because this is going up in October
19th to 29th. Yeah, so there's going to be six versions of each show. I know I've read a draft of all of them. And the earlier draft, I've read a second draft of most of them. Some bits they're rewriting. I mean, they've never been staged before, and that's kind of, I think, part of the fun of it, and why we think it's valuable. But it's funny because every time they would come into a session, like, I don't always have the draft that they're working on. And so something would come up and be like, "Oh, I have no idea where this goes." Like, I don't know, like, or even especially for the first two sessions, what we were working on, playwriting and dramaturgy, some people would bring in a different creative team. Like, who are these people? Like, there was all these great kind of artists like cycling in and out of the room, and I didn't always know who the actors were, or they were bringing in someone for the day, or before they kind of finalized their cast. And now it's getting quite, I think, scaled. And actually, this weekend I'm looking forward to kind of checking in with people and seeing how they're doing.
Yeah.
I've checked in with the playwrights to make sure that they're all going well, and they're kind of doing their own rehearsal processes. For the week before we go into production, we're going to have the space available for them, so we'll be able to see what they've been doing, and if they want any help on staging, or if they have any questions, or if they want any.
What performance space are you guys at?
We're at the Attic, which is over by Queen and Greenwood.
The brick and mortar space, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Have you worked in that space before?
We haven't.
No?
Actually, this is the first time. I think it's nice as an intimacy of the space. And actually, this is kind of something I think that works really well in this space. All of these stories function around a fairly domestic narrative. And it's nice to have a place that could feel like their home. And some of them are very contemporary. Some of them are not. Genevieve's goes back and forth in time. But there's something nice about I don't know, have you been in the space before?
Yeah.
So there's the kind of like the beams and just like the way that the place is structured. It feels like it isn't quite contemporary, and yet the entire thing is kind of sleek white. So we can go back and forth in time. It doesn't feel out of place or jarring. It just kind of works within the space. And we can light it, and we can modify the way that people perceive it, but it just felt like it actually fit really well for all three of the pieces. And I think having them in a space that we kind of take for a couple weeks and feel at home with, and get in there and kind of not own. We don't own it, but like own it. It was great.
How long has the whole process been from beginning to performance? Like, how long?
It'll be 6 months.
Okay.
So we approved the playwrights before that, so I guess we've been reading them since we announced kind of what we were going to be doing this year. And then we went through submissions, and we had a good friend of mine, Andrew Markowiak, who was our script coordinator, read through a lot of submissions as well. He is one of the co-founders of Filament. Filament Incubator. And they do a lot of new work, a lot of York grads out of that group. So we've really kind of looked at it, and tried to curate, I think, a variety of shows, a variety of different tones and voices. The actual development sessions are 6 months. Like, they're just one day a month for 6 months. So I didn't want, we're not doing the rehearsal process, but it's supplementary to their strides as they write. And just kind of gives them an idea of who we are, I think, so that they know what's coming together. I mean, I can't wait for the actual being in the space. I think that week before is going to be really valuable. And kind of building those spaces. And we're doing a lot of stuff throughout the festival, I think, to kind of engage community, which will be nice. I think it'll be good.
What kind of stuff? Is there anything you can tell me about what you're planning to do?
Yeah. So I'm writing a play right now that is not as done as these plays are, but it's a play that's kind of circles around the idea of cloning that I've been working on for the past year, and we're going to be doing a stage reading of it during the second week of the festival, just kind of a low key thing. But I'd like to see it read aloud, and I'd like to really hear people's thoughts about it, because I just think. Surprisingly, cloning is actually a very divisive issue amongst people. I think it's a really fascinating thing. And I actually think it brings up a lot of themes and ideas that I think is prevalent to talk about in theater. Yeah. So we're doing that in the second week on the Tuesday. We're doing a workshop, a 5-hour workshop of the Michael Chekhov Technique, so that people can come in and do the work with us if they'd like to find out what that is. It's pretty cheap, so that people don't feel like you have to break the bank to learn it. It's just, we just want people to feel like they can come up to us and find out what we're doing. And we're doing a closing night and Halloween party. I just got our SOP, so I can. We're doing it. So we do a Halloween party every year. This will be the third year that we've done an annual Halloween party, but this time it's kind of nice to do it with the festival. Kind of close it out on the same day, and Halloween is for sure my favorite holiday. Or just it's just I don't know. Many I think actors and people would feel that way as well.
Yeah, it's common. So the cloning thing, it's interesting. Yeah. How when it gets divisive, because I think people are fine as long as it's in their science fiction and they don't have to think about it. But as soon as you present people with if this thing existed, then X, then it gets people start to get really.
And it's so funny because there's tons of literature around cloning. There's lots of film around cloning. There's a handful of theater. Carol Churchill has a play called A Number, and there's a few pieces that I've read. I think Alistair McDowell has one. But I just think it's a nice medium to see in theater. And I also think the thing that I think is really exciting is getting actors to play clones. Because it takes advantage of of theater in and of itself, that you can have completely different people in the same body. And it's eerie. Yeah. It's eerie and it's exciting. That was kind of one of the first hooks into it that I think would be fun to play, fun to work on.
That is interesting. That's because that is the thing that we will accept in theater that we won't accept in film.
Yes,
like the twins in Comedy of Errors. Usually played by two different actors. Who don't necessarily look alike, but we accept because we say they're identical. It's one of those suspension of disbelief things that were afforded in theater.
And I think it's just I just think, well, do you mind if I ask what if you were going to see a piece about clowns, what is it that would excite you about it? Because I've been asking people this kind of question point blank, and I've been amazed by how different the answer is. So what is your expectation if you were to go see a piece about clowns?
I think what's interesting about the idea of clones is, well, for me right now, because this could change in an hour. But thinking about it in terms of what rights are afforded to a clone. You are a copy of an original. Do you have the same rights as the original? Even if you were to contain the same memories, but that original is still there. What is your, what's are you a person?
Are you an individual? I think it's also, that's what I find really fascinating too, is if you're the carbon copy of someone else, at what point do you branch off? And at what point, or do you? Are you continuing the predetermined destiny of the person that came before you in the same sequence, the same way, in the same thoughts? Or is there some element that creeps inside you that makes you a different person based off the experiences that you've had?
It's really interesting because there's I've been rewatching some Star Trek: The Next Generation. And there's an episode where William Riker finds that because of a transporter accident, there's a copy of him, and they both have they have the same memories up to the point where they diverge, and it's a matter of which one. They just sort of have this. Obviously, they have an adversarial thing because Will thinks that he's less because that's just a person. That's a copy. It's not the first time Star Trek has dealt with that cloning issue, but it's how do you first off, how do you as the original relate to your clone, do you consider it lesser? Like, how does that all?
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions about that. So
and I think a lot of my fascination, like the I don't know, quick description of what I'm working on is it's a domestic narrative that surrounds the explorer's clones within a supernatural crisis. So it takes place in a world there's a lot of things going on outside, but we're seeing essentially a mother and son, and then a mother and son too.
Right.
So and how does that change your relationship with that person? Is your relationship the same? Can you reconcile the balance between two people? Is it possible?
Yeah.
If you've gone through a grieving process for somebody and then you experience that same person again and they exist in the flesh exactly the same as they did before, how do you reconcile that? I can't. I just find it such a great experience. I can't fathom it. That's why I find it so fascinating. But it seems so possible. And it's not, we don't need explosions. I could just have two sitting there discussing that is enough for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing. We now, so much of science fiction now it's all laser guns and explosions and all that stuff. But, we can also have science fiction, and, there's a lot of old shows that used to do this sort of thing, where science fiction is not big grand space operas, which really we do have Star Wars to thank for that, but almost small drawing room dramas sometimes, just about a situation.
I mean I think that's the kind of the beauty of it. The more you draw the realism into these circumstances, the more truthful they become, and the more we're going to gravitate towards the absurd ideas. Right? I think it's the way that you treat the story, not the material itself. I think there's lots of great ways to take stories about anything, witches, aliens, ghosts, whatever, and you can bring it into a place where it feels like it could be a part of your own life. And that's what I hope, is that you walk into these circumstances and you think, what would I do in this circumstance? Not, wow, that was zany and cool and funny. Much as there's a place for that, I love Rick and Morty as much as the next guy. Not everything I want in life is kind of absurd, zany sci-fi.
Well, it's always nice when you, if there's a play, and movies too, I'll take movies too, but when people leave and they're still talking about the movie. So many movies are kind of disposable, or sometimes even plays, you leave and, that was fine. But you don't feel the need to talk about it. But man, when there is a play that people are talking about, when they leave the theater, and if you walk out and there's still people hanging around outside that theater and they're still talking about that movie, you've totally got something unique there.
We did a show at the Toronto Fringe this year called Recall, a science fiction piece by Eliza Clark. And one of my favorite things was running up to people at the tents and people being like, what does it mean? What's going on? How do I grapple with that? And I kind of had a bit of a science fiction slant, and really that play was more about psychopaths than the future. But I just think it's so refreshing for people. I think there's something nice about science fiction, same with horror, that doesn't get seen very often in theater, and I don't know why. I don't have any particular attachment. Maybe it's just because of the demographic that sees theater. I don't know.
I think that the demographic might be part of it. Also, theater likes to consider, and in some cases likes to consider it important, air quotes important. And a lot of the times, the establishment sees genre as it's kind of frivolous. Right. It's not important to talk about
in the same
things,
sense as film, kind of in a way.
Yeah. So you find that almost nobody does horror in theater anymore. I think there's more sci-fi themed stuff than horror, because I think people haven't quite.
It's also
how to do it.
It's hard.
Shit!
It's very hard.
How do you do it?
That was. I think it's really fun. I mean, that's one of the things that we tried to do. So the first show that I did Mercury for was certainly in that direction. The Unit 102 space was perfect for it, and it was claustrophobic and wonderful.
I'm fascinated with the idea of doing theater, horror in a theater.
I just think it's really, and I don't want to do, we did Titus Andronicus as well, and it's just, you got to be careful how often you subject your audience to that experience. I just like, I don't want to be known for doing that exclusively, you know, but I think it's valuable if people are game for it.
Yeah.
And I think just like horror, when you tell people you have to be good on your promise, but that they're going to have a visceral experience, they will line up in crowds, you know?
I mean, there's obviously an audience for horror, right? These movies have audiences, and sometimes they're like hits, and sometimes they have a slow burn, but there's people who love horror, and we don't give them that in the theater.
No.
I don't know if it's because it's too challenging to do it, or if again we tend to shy away from genre. But fuck, if you could, like, because theater is so immediate that you could really really take an audience for a ride that they won't get in the theater. It's like, you know, if somebody slaps somebody in a movie, nobody gives a shit.
Right.
But if somebody slaps somebody on the stage, the whole audience is like,
gasps.
Oh yeah, it's so, because it's happening right there. So imagine, I keep thinking, like, imagine a horror thing happening right there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but.
Yeah, and I think there's certain places. I mean, I think the Pillowman's a great example of something that's really kind of taken that medium and made it mainstream. I mean, within theater, I've seen lots of. I've seen one production of the Pillowman, but it's been done so many times. Right. I think it's Martin McDonagh's play. I don't know if you've read it, but
I haven't.
Oh, it's incredible. It's anyway, I don't want to ruin the plot, I think he's got an incredible capacity for understanding pacing and expectation for people when they come into the theater and flipping it. And I just think structurally, there's different things that you can do with theater than you can with film. And I think there's a really untapped amount of possibility within that realm that we just don't see. And there's a couple of people who've done. I remember going to see Luis Fernandez, who's one of the Unit 102 guys, did a play called The Hungry a couple years ago. And tonally, it did a lot of different things, but when it really clicked into that horror realm, I just remember thinking, like, this could work. Like, this can be a medium. Like, you could have a theater company dedicated to that, you know, and just do exclusively that one thing. And if you can really crank it out, people will come. And I think maybe it is too niche. I don't know. I just don't understand why it doesn't happen.
I don't know that it's too niche. I think that it is niche.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing that I think, because a lot of people who don't go to theater have an idea of what theater is. Probably because they saw some bad theater. They think it's either musicals or like another damn living room thing or whatever. But I feel like if you gave them something they were not expecting, and horror would be that, then they would be hooked. Because those are the kind of people, like, people love those
murder mysteries,
the found
oh yeah.
They love that shit. But imagine, like, being in the room, and the murder mystery sort of has that thing too, but like take that to another.
Well, I guess Sleep No More is such a great example of that, right?
Oh fuck yeah!
Because they know it. I mean, maybe one of the most successful plays. I mean, I don't know what the revenue is, but
I don't know, but they've been running for years. And, you know, they have return audiences.
Yeah,
like people who Excel spreadsheet how to get the experience they want out of the night. So yeah, there's definitely an audience for it.
Totally. I think it's also the horror requires. I don't think horror works at a proscenium. This is maybe I think it's very, very hard to. If you separated your audience from your performers, I don't think you can withhold the same amount of suspense that you could.
Oh no!
When you're on the same, you can still. It could be a thriller. But yes. I won't have the same fear if you've created a fourth wall for me.
But like in some of the indie spaces in this city, like the new Assembly, you know, new, the Red Sandcastle, some of those other ones, like the audience is like way close.
Yeah.
And there's no separation there, so you could really fuck with an audience in some really.
And I have.
Yes, well there you go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not just for the sake of, but for the sake of storytelling. I just think that you work pace differently when you're in a small room than when you do when you're in a big space.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody. I can't remember who the actor was, but it was somebody in a production of Hamlet that was doing it within a bar. and they were talking, Dave Gingrich, and he was talking about acting in the bar and what it could do for Shakespeare. And it's just I get to think differently. I get to think differently in this space. I don't have to show as much. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's experiencing less, but it was just because of the intimacy, and it changes the format of that. And I just think horror just really clicks in an intimate environment.
Yeah.
And just you can't be separate from the action, otherwise you're not on the hook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you on social media, Will?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you got?
So my Twitter is Will King Actor. I've got a website as well. I think it's also just willking.ca. Seven Siblings has a website called sevensiblingstheater.ca, which currently has all the tickets and information available for the Future Theatre Fest.
Damn.
Which we hope lots of people can come see.
Yeah.
And you can tell me all about what you think about the shows. Please do. I 100% mean it. Nice. I just like having the conversations with people when they're there. Because I feel like it's actually, I don't know, a lot of people don't realize that they can do that. That stick around and talk.
No, that's true. People don't. You can tell because in a lot of shows, the actors are doing their curtain calls.
Yeah.
And people are like, I got to get to my car.
Yeah.
It's a pet peeve.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have.
And sometimes there's processing time. But if anyone feels like they don't need any processing time, they can come chat with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. It was really nice to meet you.